We have a huge Habs trade update coming from Pierre Lebrun on Insider Trading as he states Montreal's intentions after losing Kaiden Guhle likely for the season and how Montreal is looking for a bigger impact deal. We had to dive into everything that Pierre Lebrun said. Plus, Jesse, we got to talk about our boy Ivan Demidov. While he didn't get a point in the game, he came in with a sick shootout winner. Still, Roman Rottenberg said it wasn't quite good enough, but hey, we'll take it. What a play from him. There was so much good going on. We are going to talk about Habs versus Wild as well, all coming up on this episode of Habs Digest, and let's just dive straight into the game really quick. And if you guys want to skip ahead to Demidov, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to skip this part. It's going to be fun, but skip ahead to Demidov, skip ahead to the trade talk, because that's the big stuff. But Jesse, I want to talk about this first. There's not a lot to say. What I will say is Dach gets his first regulation loss, but it's really cool to see him get to go up against Marc-Andre Fleury. The first line I thought still looked really solid tonight, and RHP playing a game which looked really good. Look, we're missing Emil Heineman. Ever since he got hit by a car, everything has gone to, not going to say that word. It's not been great, but, this is one of those games you learn from, you bounce back. You're learning other teams are learning the Habs' habits, and I think right now we're seeing a lot of teams see what they need to do to stop the Habs, and they're stopping them, and I think it's just about adjusting moving forward.
For sure, and capitalizing on your chances when you get them, right? I think that was the hardest part about the game that was painful, is that, right when we were really generating that momentum, that's right when the Wild would really attack and kind of get us there. So obviously, at the same time, it's up for the Habs to kind of obviously get those bounces, to make that luck kind of go their own way. We needed more volume. Mm-hmm. We needed to shoot more in this game. But Josh, I feel like we can't blame the refs, but it's a couple games in a row now where it's we're getting some calls that should be really going our way, right? So anyway, tight checking first period there. But we needed to get a little bit more volume after that point.
Yeah, that tripping call was questionable on Dach early on. And then, when the Habs finally did draw a penalty, it had been 161 minutes since the last penalty that they drew. And that came again the first period against the Devils. And that was the only penalty they drew tonight. And, anyway, just a bit questionable. Did want to shout out Marc-Andre Fleury, though. Again, getting a shutout his last game in Montreal. It gave us something to smile about at the end of the game. So happy to see the Flower do what he did there. Move up the all-time shutout leaderboards. It is a feel-good story, but let us know what you thought about the game. Probably not too many positive thoughts, but we're going to change that right now because we got to talk about our boy Ivan. My gosh, is he ever on a tear. Now, this was before the game today. This was coming into the game. In his first 33 games, he had 6 goals, 14 assists for 20 points, and under 11 minutes of ice time. In his last 15, now 16 games, he has 13 goals, 7 assists for 20 points as well. In less than half the amount of games at a much increased ice time. Jesse, he has been so good. Let's roll the clip again of his shootout winner today. Just want to say every single game that he's playing, he makes an impact, right? I watched a couple periods of this game, and you notice Ivan as soon as he steps onto the ice. With the teams in the offensive zone, defensive zone, he has the puck, he doesn't have the puck. It doesn't matter. This guy's making an impact left, right, and center, and it is unbelievable that every single time he steps on the ice, we have something to talk about.
For sure. And getting, doubling his goal production since this Hughes visit. And for sure, that's part of the development, but you have to feel as well that just kind of flipped a switch for him. He's following up, getting a hat trick just the other day, now getting the game-winning goal in this one. So absolutely just doing phenomenal stuff, being that star player right now for SKA. So absolutely amazing. Just to see him on a tear. Again, pulling that similar move that we saw Hage pull the other day, obviously to great effect. So our prospects are just absolutely killing it right now.
They really are. And I actually, after we watch this one more time, I found a quote from Hockey News Hub on Twitter, which is one of the best follows if you want to get up to date on all the KHL stuff. He said there's a quote he read about Ivan Demidov, and I'm not going to read this verbatim. Feel free to pause and read it yourself. I'll skip through some parts. Don't know who this quote's attributed to, but you got to assume it's another player. He basically said, that player said, yeah, Ivan is, or Vanya, which is what they call him, has really cool hands, but his biggest thing is power skating. His father never left him in that regard. The training was killer. Tried to repeat it once. My legs almost fell off. They said he has powerful ankles, and his edge work is like nothing they've ever seen. He pushes them hard into the ice. He can go in any direction, hold his body literally on one leg, and still shoot from that position. This requires a lot of strength and a lot of work with a good skating coach. So just something really cool to add on to Ivan Demidov at the end there. So just we saw the edge work, but just wanted to leave that with you guys. I think it's cool. But Jesse, we got some big trade talk to get into. We're not going to hesitate. And I want to start with the first quote from Pierre Lebrun. I'm going to get your thoughts on this as soon as I'm done reading this because it's really interesting. on Insider Trading, he said the bigger picture really trumps all. He said they're going to stick with their current plan, and they're not going to go to replace Guhle with a rental defenseman and pay the rental price. So that's one thing. But he also said the kind of trade they would make, and that was even before this injury, would be the kind of trade they would do in June or July, i.e. a bigger impact deal that can help this team beyond this season. Their version of being buyers would be staying in the race between now and March 7, keeping a lot of their pending UFAs. But Jesse, to hear this from Pierre Lebrun saying, Kent Hughes, they said Montreal has had discussions with other teams about one of these bigger impact deals. You got to wonder when this is coming. I mean, if they want to stay in the mix, why not now? I guess they don't want to rush it, but this is interesting to hear.
But the fact that as soon as this summer we could really start making some big trades, which is really going to affect, the outlook and the landscape of this Montreal Canadiens team as they're looking to compete, is absolutely very exciting. And if we're talking about, kind of potential trades and what Kent Hughes might be looking to target there, you'd have to think that front of mind is a first pairing right-hand defenseman or a second or a 2C, right? So either one of those two things has to kind of involve the plan there. So you'd have to wonder, obviously we've been chatting, what is that fit? We've been hearing kind of the rumors where a lot of Habs fans, they're interested in Noah Dobson, right? And what's so interesting about this player is that, if the fit is going to be key, as we've seen with Carrier, it's I like the player. I'm not completely sold. Let me say why. It's we already have Hudson right now as our first pairing kind of guy on that left side, and that's our offensive guy. So are we going to have two offensive guys, two arguably number ones there as a 1-2? It's kind of great to have in a lot of ways, but playing that offensive way, they're both kind of QBs on the power play. So it's you're kind of negating one of their kind of real strengths there as well. I'm super happy with what we're having in Hudson. He's an offensive guy. For a right-hand defenseman, that first pairing, should we go with a little bit more maybe of a defensive guy that obviously is kind of versatile? Maybe that's the better fit. But obviously, with Dobson, even though he's more of an offensive guy, his defensive game's improving. As long as he has a net positive on the game, he's going to score more goals than he's going to allow against. I mean, in today's game, that's acceptable though. He is interesting for that reason. He could potentially be a good fit, right? Where we think, okay, maybe two offensive guys doesn't make sense. But in today's NHL, as long as they're outscoring their opponents, that's really what's going to be the biggest factor in Kent Hughes determining if this is a good fit.
And we've seen Mike Matheson play with Lane Hudson to great effect. Now, Matheson is quite good defensively, and Dobson does still have some deficiencies defensively. I mean, there's a lot of players a lot of offensive defensemen who are like that. But the thing is, at the end of the day, this dude's a number one type of defenseman, right? This guy had over 70 points last year. He is unbelievable. This season's a bit of a down year for him, but the New York Islanders are in a bit of a rough spot, right? Brock Nelson's probably going to be traded. They're near the bottom of the Metro Division. I mean, they're hanging around the playoff picture. I'm not going to say they're tanking or anything, but things are not great in New York, especially with their cap structure. And we've even heard trade rumors about a guy like Noah Dobson. So this is from the Hockey News for the New York Islanders. They said he was a shoo-in for an 8x8 deal, but the cap going up is not going to make it easier on the Islanders despite his play. But they say the question is, how much do they feel Dobson's worth to the overall success of the team going forward? That could look a lot different following the draft or the trade deadline. And the question after that is, if they feel they can survive without number 8, does his name get included in a trade package for an elite talent if a trade of that sort becomes available? But while they do say elite talent here, you gotta wonder, Jesse, at what point did the Islanders say, okay, I don't think we can keep going with this core? I'm not saying they're going to blow it up immediately, but again, if they think that they'll blow it up within Dobson's contract, trading him now will fetch maybe more than it ever will, because, I don't know, he's having a bit of a down year, and, depending on the Islanders situation in 2 or 3 years, his numbers might look worse on a worse team. It'll be harder to trade. I don't really know, but right now teams can absorb him. Look, I'm just saying, if he came up in trade talks, and this was even possible for Montreal to trade for him, I think I would probably move a lot for this guy. A lot. Because straight up, you don't get the kind of opportunity to trade for a number one right-hand shot defenseman. I get your concerns, Jesse, but do you think that even seeing Hudson play with Matheson to great effect, and I know you made a good point of scoring more than your opposition is how you win games a lot in today's NHL, especially with this Habs style of play, do you think this could be a long-term fit, and would you sign him for, say, even over $8 million a year if we were to trade for him?
it could be a good fit because, as you mentioned, like there has been some good success with Matheson. I kind of would have preferred Martin St. Louis kind of sticking to those pairings a little bit more of what we've really kind of had some success with because it's shown that it can work. It's just obviously the normal rationale is that you don't want to have like too many just kind of offensive defensemen, especially, you know, when we're looking like you often just need that one really stud number one, and you can kind of build around that in terms of kind of saving money. So it's interesting, but this is a huge position of need for the Montreal Canadiens. The Isles have to kind of do something here. They're really stagnating. The fan base isn't happy. They haven't really been showing out to games. Like you feel like there's starting to be a little bit of desperation kind of setting in. It's a perfect storm where like Montreal's one of the teams where if there is that big cost, that big ask, they're able to do that. This is a position in need. So very interesting to kind of monitor going forward because I would argue that right-hand D, that first pairing, is more important a target right now than even that 2C position.
Yep, I would agree. And, you know, you got to think, if that kind of trade comes available and the Islanders are not looking for an elite talent, and they're maybe instead looking for young talent, it starts with Reinbacher. Absolutely starts. And, you know, we're right at the end of the video. I'm just going to give maybe a hot take here. That this is maybe one of the few situations where I would consider it. Not saying it's a slam dunk, but I would consider it because you know Dobson's the number one right-hand D. Now, the play style is not as cohesive with the Habs style as someone like a Reinbacher at his ceiling could be, but I'll leave that for an exercise to the viewer. I think a lot of you might not agree with me, but let me know your thoughts down below. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming up. Again, nothing linking the Habs to Dobson, but I see a lot of you talk about it, and we're definitely listening. Thank you all for watching so much. Sucks about that game, eh? But if you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for being here. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.